you can have the Christmas tree and all the cameras.
You don't want to know my reason?
Do I need to know the reason? I'll even give Anma director to that package.
I actually did not do the whole the regular go to high school, finish, go to uni. So I actually finished. You can tell someone go to hell and they will enjoy
the trip.
They'll be looking forward to go to school. They're like, so Monday morning the office is not open because the keys.
People have reported.
Yes, the keys are with someone who is in Western. You need to be able to fake it enough that people.
Someone traumatized the mountain.
Yeah.
And it was not you.
No. He sent flowers for how soon can you come back? Admins, if we do our job right, you don't notice we exist.
Yeah.
But if we don't, that's when, pardon my French, that's when they...
Hey, hello. Welcome to yet another episode of the Pipeline Podcast. And this being our final episode of this year, 2024. We actually already in the Christmas period. So let me just start off by wishing you a Merry Christmas and hoping that you're going to enjoy this episode. We have a very interesting guest lined up for us today. Very interesting because you'll get to hear their story. Let me not also give away who they are, but we hope that you're going to enjoy their story. There's someone who we have worked with here at Synergetic Development Group for quite a number of years. Very good experience in administration, very interesting background and very interesting journey that she has gone through in her career. So karibuni sana, and hoping that you're going to enjoy this episode. Karibuni sana, thank you and welcome once more to this final episode of the year, the Pipeline Podcast. And today we are privileged to have one of our very own energetic, one of our admins. I'll let her introduce herself and then we carry on from there. Karibu sana, madam.
Thank you. My name is Maryanne Gathemia. I am the admin and operations manager at Synergetic Development Group, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Karibu. You've been a very elusive guest. Tumekutafuta sana.
I think I said yes jokingly, and then the team decided that I was serious, and here we are.
Ulikuwa unajiuliza hatujui jokes.
Acha nikwambie, I was like, that was a joke.
Yeah, but we are very glad that you finally made time in your, very busy schedule to just be with us and speak to us about what you do and more about your career. So, asante, even before we begin.
Thank you. If I get to keep the cool mug, that would be a very nice thank you.
Let's
discuss.
A very cool mug. We'll discuss that in the course of the podcast, or depending on how the podcast goes.
There's a chance.
Yes, there's a question I'll ask you, and if you get it correctly, there's a question somewhere in the course of this podcast. All the other guests have failed. But I know
let's see. I have been told I am index 1, so let's see.
So. Right, so just jumping right into it, what inspired you to get into admin?
That's a very interesting question. When you're dreaming about what you want to do for your career, I don't think there's anyone who'll ever tell you, I was dreaming to be an admin. And the same applies for me. I wanted to be a doctor, interestingly enough. So, and I did, how you are I was a very analytical child. And I went through the different disciplines for medicine, and I was like, I don't like blood. I don't want to do what. So I was like, okay, but I like people. So I was like, you know what? I'll be a psychiatrist. So that was my plan. Then life happens. Life has that thing of happening.
Yeah.
They say that we make plans and then God laughs. So God laughed. And lo and behold, here I am in admin. I got the people part right, but still waiting for the doctor part.
So at what point did this change? Some people say that they started, initially they wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, and then they met maths, you know. Ama they got into high school and
Mwalimu wa maths
they met
alifanya ile
physics.
kitu.
They made physics and physics just decided no. Alafu unaenda ukizishukisha polepole, unaanza na medicine, kidogo umekuwa, acha nisitaje hizo careers. Next thing you know,
dentist, but you could have settled for dentists. They say dentists are, no shade to dentists by the way, but they say dentists are doctors who did not make the cut. So I don't know, thinking back, I think it's just life happened, like there was a lot going on, so medicine was not an option because one of the things that I ended up doing was I actually did not do the whole the regular go to high school, finish, go to uni. So I actually finished high school and went to work.
Oh,
and that's
really?
how I ended up in admin, because this is Kenya, what are you going to be employed to do that without actual going to uni? So I went to uni after. So that's what happened. So that is how medicine, unless I want to go back to medical school at this point in my life, and then you think of 7 years and you're like,
basically it will mean kickstarting your career fresh.
yes,
isn't it?
Yeah, but interestingly enough, my sister also did it, so I think
Medicine,
we have yeah, she's a psychologist, and she went after, she actually went in her early 40s, so maybe there is hope, who knows. Yeah,
acha nikupatie siri. Wherever you are right now,
yeah,
do a PhD, upate title ya doctor.
That's the plan. Actually, right now I'm working on my master's, and my mentor has been on my case for, you need to be called a doctor. So she's waiting for that PhD. So there is a lot of pressure that I may become a doctor that way.
Yeah. The young you is going to be very proud when you eventually get the title of a doctor. Either way, that the end goal is to be called a doctor.
Keyword.
Interesting. So you've actually mentioned that your academic journey was not a typical academic journey that anyone would go for, because typically we'd go from high school, campus, masters, or get a job and whatnot. So, but you had an interesting journey where it wasn't that linear. So through that process, what was your first job, and anything interesting that you learned from it?
So one of the interesting things about so while I was in college, and then I think I've always been that person who easily makes friends. So I became friends with the receptionist. And one day she came and told me, you're here, but the end goal is for you to get a job. So come I take you somewhere where you're gonna get a job. Let me tell you, I was a Barbie. And okay, I am a Barbie, because even Sheng to this day still doesn't gel. I was taken to a place where everyone was speaking Sheng, and it was a sales job. And I remember standing there telling myself, Maryanne, what are you doing here? Like, you cannot even communicate with these people. Because remember, I've gone through a group of schools. We will not mention names. And mine was not even just a group of schools. It was, yes.
The group of schools.
And then here I am. I'm in college. I'm doing PR. I'm studying PR. I'm learning German. And then I've been told, come and do a sales job.
Wow.
So my first job was actually a sales job. Then we would be dropped in the middle of big major towns, urban towns, and we were selling, and this is going to date me a bit, we were selling airtime, Safaricom airtime and lines. I remember I had more money in pocket money than I was earning. Like, literally, what I'd earn at the end of the day was less than what I had as pocket
money from home.
But it was fun. I'd always told myself, I stuck with it because I was like, okay, it's a challenge, let's do this. I'd always told myself I'd be horrible at sales. And then I discovered I was actually good at sales. And I was like, oh, okay, so we can do this. So that was what you'd call my first job. But my first formal employment was at a call center. So I did the sales job for a couple of months. And then in the process, I met someone who told me about an interview. So I go for an interview. At this point, I had no idea what a call center was. And I pass. And I'm told, come to work in the evening. So I had this very difficult task of explaining to my father how I am not a doctor, I am not a police officer, I am not a nurse, but I'm going to be working at night. Because we were dialing into the North American market. So that meant our shift was starting at midnight. So my dad really struggled with that concept. He's like, Ati, you're doing what? Ati, where? What kind of a job is that? And even I had no idea what that was.
And you know, for them in that generation, watu walikuwa wanafanya kazi usiku were working in certain streets in Nairobi.
Let me tell you. Because you see, my shift would end at 3 a.m. And then I discovered I had trouble falling asleep if it was bright outside. So I'd try and get home before it's light outside. I would be the only female in a matatu at 3 a.m. So guys are looking at me, they're like, you're too covered up to have come from, like you could tell what are they thinking. They're like, ay, huyu ametoka K Street kweli? And I will not mention the things I saw being in town at those ungodly hours, but it was a whole education in itself. Yeah, but I did it for 4 years, rose to the rank of a QA supervisor. It was fun. It was a lot of learning because I discovered I had a love for research, because part of what we'd do is we'd have to research into the markets. I discovered how to have a thick skin because, unlike Kenyans who are polite, you will call an American or a Canadian and they will start using bleep, bleep, bleep. And you're like, so you just hang up the phone if you don't want to talk to me. Like, that thing never used to make sense. You're like,
and especially if they hear the accent on the other side of the phone.
No, one of the things now, that's the interesting part. So 2 things that they do is you use something called a VPN that gives you a number. So on their end, it shows up as a local number. And then second, part of the reason why we would get these jobs is because we had neutral accents. So they cannot tell that you're not
a local
in
their country.
So what they would is when they hear you telling them, do you have 5 minutes to do a survey because you had a script? That's when the interesting conversation started, and you'd be like, okay, you could just have said no. Yeah. So then having to hear that kind of abuse, for example, on the phone, and then still make the next call, taught me how to get a thick skin. It taught me how to deal with people. Sometimes you had to talk down someone, and then you're remembering you have a supervisor who's also listening in to the call. So if you had an issue with a call, like you had a termination rate, so if you had an issue, they would be like, they'd call you in and ask you questions. So that was...
So you had to be polite.
You had to be
Whatever
polite. And you had to smile. That's when you learned that someone can see your smile on your phone. Apparently they can. There's research about it, but yeah.
Wow, interesting. And we were just talking earlier, and you mentioned you've had a very interesting career journey in terms of the places you've worked. Would you mind just sharing those with us, albeit on high level, the various places from the call center? How did that morph into now where you are at as an admin at Synergetic?
That's a loaded question. So I think if I was to summarize, pretty much, so call center, moved to a property farm, so a realtor, worked with a doctor, worked in a school, then did a lot of government. So at some point, I was pretty sure I was going to be in government for a while. Like my previous role just before Synergetic was in government. So at different stages in government, a lot of it was admin. So I did admin in different departments and different organizations, but then also communications. And that's what allowed me to, even now, by the time I was ready to go back to school and choose something, I had now the foresight of having done different roles to know, okay, what do I want to study? Because you see, a lot of people, you're just straight out of high school unless you had been exposed to something, you usually don't know yourself well enough to know this is what I'd want to study. Now, for me, going back to school a bit later, I knew this is what I want to pursue. So that helped.
Interesting. So basically what you're saying is that your experience in the marketplace helped you tailor what you wanted now to pursue, the qualifications you wanted to pursue.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. So, Maryanne, you've had quite a lustrous career. How many years has it been?
Oh, that's many. You really want to date me in this interview?
Hard to
I
know
have
you.
a baby face, and we're trying to maintain that enigma of figuring out how old is she.
Plus, you've mentioned that you started working immediately after high school. So we are not
we work
expecting
with
the years to
engineers,
be.
watafanya hesabu. Nyinyi na hesabu mko tu.
Unaweza tupatia an estimate. Tuambie 2 to 4 years.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's just say, you know how when you have to fill in a form, there are those brackets. So let's just say we're in the 10 to 15 bracket.
10 to 15 years
10
of
to 15
experience.
bracket. Tunachezea hapo.
Wow, that
Yes.
is quite a long time.
Yeah.
Wow. So during this period, are there some critical skills that you think are very, or rather you believe are very necessary or critical for your career as an administrator?
Yeah, definitely. I think for one to excel in any career, there's some key fundamentals that if you don't have this, by the it's going to be a very short career. And admin is not any different. So for admin, one of the biggest, I think, is the people aspect. You need to be good with people, or you need to be able to. This is a very hard thing to say, but you need to be able to fake it enough that people feel that you care or that you like them. Because a lot of times, as much as admin is a background role, you will have to interact with people. So if you're not good with people, it's very easy to tell. And it makes your work twice as hard.
Yeah.
And then tied to that is, and why it's a critical skill, is because you'll need to negotiate something at some point. So if you don't have negotiating skills, and part of you being a good negotiator is you need to be good with people. That even if you're, let's say for example, you're trying to get people to buy into something that might be harder, you still need to be able, as much as you're going to be the bad guy, you need to be able to understand people well enough and be good with people that you can be like, okay, you can get people to see your point of view. Yeah.
Basically, it involves getting buy-in from people. So you need to get yourself to a place where you can tell someone no with a smile on your face.
Exactly.
You know, you can deliver bad news to someone.
So there's a saying, I'm trying to remember who said it. I don't know if it comes from a movie where the person was saying you can tell someone go to hell and they will enjoy
the trip.
They'll be looking forward to go to it.
Yeah.
They're like,
yeah, you tell someone go to hell in a manner that they actually look forward to the trip.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. So that's, I think those two are the main skills, because everything else, and then attention to detail. Because what admin involves is the nitty-gritty. So if you don't, one of the things we keep saying about admin is it's the cogs in the wheel. So for most of us, we just see the big wheel, but we don't realize that it's the small pieces that move the big wheel.
That even hold the wheel together.
Exactly. So in any aspect where you think admin is what keeps things running. It's the one will be the ones who will remember, by the way, you needed nails. You'll remember, you'll write nails, but then as an engineer, someone has to remember to go to the hardware
and get those nails.
Admin will be the ones who will remember, by the way, those nails are being delivered where and at what time, because the supply chain person will order the nails and then their work is done. Admin is the one who will be like, okay,
collection, where do you pick them,
and
what
which
time
site
do you pick them?
Remember, you have multiple
they could
sites.
go to the wrong site, actually.
Yeah. I don't know. So let me tell you a little story. So there's this admin. She was very good at her job. So people thought they don't need her.
Mm.
Then she falls sick
Mm.
just before, and it's interesting because this story comes about the time Christmas. So Christmas break, the office closes, they're about to go back. So she falls sick, gets admitted. So she sends a message to her boss for, I'm sorry, I'm unwell and I'll not be able to be around. The boss is like, no worries, take your time, no biggie. But because she was unwell, the person who opens the office happened to be Ushago. She did not, because she was unwell, she did not send money for that person to come back. So the person did not come back. So Monday morning, the office is not open.
Wow.
Because the keys,
people have reported.
Yes, the keys are with someone who is in Western. Then there was furniture that needed to be delivered to another site. Again, she was not there to coordinate, so the furniture was not brought to where it was supposed to be. And then if that was not bad enough, there was something that needed to be done. In that span of 2 hours, the mess that was there, the boss sent flowers. Remember before it was, take your time, we don't really need you, we'll be fine. He sent flowers for, how soon can you come back? And that story just emphasizes that admins, if we do our job right, you don't notice we exist. But if we don't, that's when, pardon my French, that's when the shit hits the fan. Because that's when you'll remember, oh my goodness, who opens the office? That's when you'll realize, oh, there's someone who orders water. Oh, you mean that electricity needs to be paid for?
Wow.
Yes.
Internet needs to be paid for.
Yes.
You know, it's the little things that actually, and I like how you've put it, that when you guys are doing your work correctly, it's very easy to go unnoticed.
Yes.
You know, it's the small things. Every time I come to the office, the door is always open. It's never clicked in my mind that someone actually...
Someone has to be here.
Yes. Someone has to be here to open the door.
Exactly.
You know, it's never crossed my mind that we've never had a power outage because a bill has not been paid.
Yeah.
You know?
If you do your job right, by then you won't be noticed. You'll only know because you dropped the ball somewhere.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So all these complex problems that you mentioned that sometimes you handle, how do you approach them? Is there a system that you have developed, or is the how generally do you approach problem solving, especially when you're faced with complex problems?
So I think it grows over time. So you start with what you're told, the whole least important, most important, those boxes. Then you realize that part of what happens is you will be working on something and then you'll be told this is urgent. So drop this and work on this. So what you just learn to do is to prioritize. And then you also learn to be confident enough to push back a bit. Because sometimes someone will come with a request and make it sound urgent, but it's not urgent. So you learn to also ask those hard questions, those leading questions actually, for how urgent is this? On a scale of 1 to 5, because you will be like, yeah, mine is urgent, I need it now. But now you start asking those hard questions for, okay, if I don't do this now, would it still make a difference if I give it to you 2 hours from now? And then the person has to stop and think, okay, actually, by the way, 2 hours from now, it's still fine.
It's still fine.
Yeah. And then you can push it a bit further and ask, what about end of day? Then they'll be like, okay, end of day might be a stretch, but if you do lunchtime, that makes sense. So then you've already gotten yourself 4 hours. So you know, okay, so lunchtime, and then now you just work with deadlines. So that way you're able to ensure that you're not putting things aside and prioritizing the wrong things. But then it also depends on what do you do, because admin is very it's very broad. So you would find, depending on what the organization does, that sometimes if the boss tells you to do something, that has to have top priority, regardless of what it is. But then you will find there are places where maybe it's if the CFO gives you a request. So you learn to balance the two, because I cannot, my answer in an organization like SDG may not be the same for someone who maybe does it in a hospital. Because then again, maybe it might be a critical thing of life and death. Yeah. So you have to also understand what are the nuances of the particular industry that you operate in. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. And of course, also just, or rather, I like the fact that you mentioned about prioritizing. That sometimes a request can come through and the person sharing it is thoroughly convinced.
Yeah.
It's very, very urgent. And I know that because sometimes I've approached you with requests.
Yeah.
That I was thoroughly convinced this one has to be done now. And if not now, then right now,
Yeah, like yesterday.
And yeah, this is actually due last week, you know. And just the fact that, and I think we also alluded to this earlier, that you're able to, first of all, investigate this request just to try and find out the actual urgency. You know, there's what is being presented to you, but then there's now the actual urgency of this matter, you know. Interesting. So,
Actually, one other thing that you realize, and you hear this a lot, that someone else's mistakes should not be your emergency. It shouldn't become your emergency. Because a lot of times what you will find, and this happens a lot with admin, because remember, admin takes care of the little details. So you'll find, for example, you needed to travel on a trip and you've known, but you forgot to request for the money that you need while you're away. Then now you're coming to admin and it's an emergency, but you've known about this trip for 2 weeks. So now you're making everyone else run around for something that you should have just planned.
Yeah. Well in advance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that's when you find that you'll have someone telling you, by the way, imagine your lack of planning is not my emergency. So it sounds harsh, but we'll say it in a nice way.
With a smile on your
We will
face.
smile. We will smile and we'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I think that one you may need to spend your own money and come and claim.
And then you'll claim a reimbursement thereafter.
And we'll even share with you the form and tell you how to go about it.
Yeah. Tusiseme tumejipata hapo mara kadhaa.
We're not naming names.
We have no need to mention names.
No.
We know ourselves.
We're good people.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I like the fact that even in that example that we just given, despite the fact that someone has come with a late request, there's still a way to accommodate them. You know, because someone would think that now that you've come late, this trip cannot happen. You know, and it's very easy to, you know, and even if you look at the policy on admin, that trip should not be, you know, accommodated because it's coming very late. There's usually a period where you're supposed to make such a request, but just the fact that, first of all, you're coming this person down and telling them, you're not telling them no, ideally, but it's more of, these are the alternative. We cannot directly accommodate your request the way you want it to be accommodated, but there's this other alternative that we can use so that, number one, we ensure that the task that's supposed to be delivered eventually gets delivered. If you need to travel maybe for a site visit, you need to travel for a client meeting, you're able to travel, you know, but also at the same time, because the request is coming in late, instead of now us trying to get emergency funds that maybe are not present, the person can fund themselves and then a reimbursement is made.
I think because, and it goes back to what are the key skills you need. Maya Angelou put it very well, that somebody may not remember what you did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. I don't need to put you down because I don't know what was going on. You've probably brought the request in late, but then maybe you've had so much work, it completely slipped your mind. So my job as a good admin is to try and find a solution. Because you're not going on holiday. It's still work related.
It's work related, yeah.
So how do we do the whole give and take? So a good admin will meet you halfway. I will realize that you don't have it in for me. So you are not coming to make me look bad. Because you know now that's the other way we tend to personalize things. We're like, this one has just decided to spoil my day. Like, why? They just thought I was having a very good day, and then you just decided.
Aliamuka akasema leo lazima niharibie mtu siku.
Yeah. So if you come and you realize by the imagine life happens to all of us. And you're like, okay, so how do we meet halfway? Because sometimes I may tell you, fund it, but you don't have that money. But the work has to continue.
Yeah.
So you will find there'll be a lot of negotiations. And I think even you and I, in the times that we've had to deal with some of these situations, you found I will go and put in a good one for you with finance for Aki. Najua, this person is doing the wrong thing, but yani, yeah. And
True.
one of the things that I think I'd say has been a plus in my time at Synergetic is because I have a good relationship with finance. I also now make finance almost look human in a sense, because you know finance will be like apana. Si unajua cut out. What do you mean? Hii pesa inatoka wapi?
Yes, requisitions have timeline.
Yeah. But now I will go and tell the finance person, Aki, I know, but ebu ona vile unaweza sort mse. And because of that, you'll find that we do the middle ground. I'll come back to you and ask that person, okay, how much of this can you? And you'll be like, okay, mimi sahi, maybe one ticket.
Yes.
And I'll be like, okay.
At least aende. Tukijaribu kusort vile atarudi.
Yes.
You know?
So that give and take is what, it's how you build relationships. And they say that businesses, I was at a training this week, and the person, and it was interesting because we're talking about waste management, and the person kept saying this thing over and over again, and they kept saying businesses are about relationships first. You do business with someone you like. So even when you and I are interacting, it's a form of a business. We may think that, oh, but you're an engineer, I'm the admin, how is that a business? But it's part of business. So if you and I don't like each other,
yeah, it will be difficult.
It will be very difficult. But if we're able to remember that, that you do business with, first it's a relationship, and you do business with people that you like. So that allows you to be able to connect with people and build those important bridges. Yeah.
All right. And out of these situations that you found yourself, or other challenging situations you found yourself in, is there one that stood out?
There've been many, but I think the one that caught all of us off guard was COVID.
Yeah, well,
you know, it's one thing to imagine you watch the movies, apocalypse, you watch what has happened, zombies have taken over, and you're always like, yeah, and then it happened. Well, not zombies, but the world shutting down. And from the admin perspective, we had people that we needed to move. We had team members in foreign countries who needed to come home.
Wow.
And at that point, we did not even have all the information. So we just knew that something was happening. Airports and borders were being shut down, and it made more sense to have our people here. So you can imagine we had team members because we had a project in Mozambique that was running.
Yeah.
So we had team members that we needed to bring. And then it's not even, already you're navigating, bringing them back to Nairobi. That's the first challenge. But then they don't live in Nairobi.
Yeah, and Nairobi also has its own lockdown, you know?
Yes. So it's navigating, how do you get them to Nairobi, then move them from Nairobi to where they live, which is the other side of the country.
Wow.
And let me tell you, it was a long couple of nights. It was phone calls, I remember. And then the funny thing was, this happened, I was I think less than 6 months in the job. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
So you're practically still in your probation.
Yeah. So I remember, it was, everyone at home was like, hey, your phone is ringing at 11 a.m. It's midnight. Why are they calling you? What is going on? But because the person has to call me.
Yeah.
This is someone you've not even ever met because they've been working.
They're actually new to you because you're new to the company.
So you're getting calls and then, you have to think about the time zones, but then they're also panicking. So I remember having a lot of those 11 a.m.s, 1 a.m.s. I remember there was even a 3 a.m. For the person has panicked and I'm calming them down, and this is a stranger. So I am calming him down, telling him, okay, it's fine. This has happened. We need to find out this. This is what we need to do. And then it's calling our people on the ground, calling government agencies. So looking back on it, it was a blessing that I had come from government, because then I had a few more connections. So I could call someone and tell them, Aki, I need this, I need a pass. Then they're like, oh, ulikuwa ministry gani? Okay, madam, wasawa, wacha nikupigia nani hivyo. So leveraging on some of those connections.
Yeah, networks that you made in your previous place.
Yes. And again, it comes back down to people, because you could be in a place and never talk to anyone.
Yeah. And it also speaks a lot about not burning bridges.
Yes.
You know,
Let me tell
just
you,
because you've gotten a new opportunity.
Let me tell you, the world is a minji. It used to be, the world is huge. No.
It's very small.
Yes, and Dengu now. Even a minji is big.
So you could be misbehaving at a farm in Kenya because you're relocating to another country.
Then you go and find that the person who's gonna pass your documents is that person, or I relate to that person you are treating. Yeah. So you just learn, treat people well. Yeah.
All right. Maryanne, how do you see your role evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
So my role personally, or as
your
admin?
Role as admin, generally the admin facet. How do you see it evolving?
That's an interesting question. I think for one of the things would be it will grow. So I see a lot of growth and a lot of more strategic input. So in the sense that as we take on bigger projects as an organization, I foresee a situation, or at least I hope to see a situation where admin gets a bigger stake at the table. And reason being, when you look at project expenditure, beyond the direct project costs, a very large section of that is usually admin related costs. And yet, during the planning phase, the design stage, admin is not usually involved as much. And so what usually happens is we have all of these other costs coming up, which could have been either avoided or could have been factored in better had we been involved. So I see that changing in terms of what's the strategic aspect, how are we looking at this, because admin will be able to point out some of these things. Like if you're setting up a new site, admin can tell you, oh, by the way, have you thought about this? Like, where will our people eat from? In which case, then you have to factor in that you will be feeding people. What we find is we'll have the technical people go and look at a site and think about it in terms of the designs or what they need to do, but they'll never remember. Yes. So we've had such challenges, especially when we take on projects that are out of town or they're in remote areas, and just having admin given a bigger role would make a big difference, because it even affects our costing mechanism, for example. Yeah. And then I also see, so that's one aspect of growth in terms of the strategic aspect, but then also in terms of the people. So I foresee a lot more people who would take on admin not as just a fallback career, but as an actual career that they can focus on, that they can build up, and then they can specialize. So right now, as we speak, we have office admins, we have site admins, and I've been privileged to work with a very good team. And some of my team have even expressed interest that that's what they want to do long term. Like, they don't see it as a filler position. So it's figuring out, how do I grow them and how do I groom them to be the best, so that they also know what are the things to look out for, so that they can support their particular sphere. Yeah, because admin is wide.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine. All right. And AI and artificial intelligence, or rather artificial intelligence, and all these new advancements that are coming through, how do you see that impacting your role?
So in two different ways. So one of the things that has happened in the last couple of years is that admin has become less paper and it has become a lot more, I guess, soft in a sense, for lack of a better word to use. So that's so seeing that a lot of roles are showing up in how AI is coming in, because now we're thinking about AI for virtually anything you can think of.
Yeah.
So it will reduce the mistakes, some of the human errors, but then it's also reducing the human touch, which is also not a good thing. Because if you have a bot, for example, that will sort out everything to do with your planning, let's say you need to do a trip, so they'll be able to organize everything from your travel, booking, the whole itinerary. You've missed the human touch of having an individual who will call you and ask you, are you okay?
Yeah.
Do you need this? So it's just finding that balance so that you're getting the benefits of AI, but then at the same time,
Yeah, you don't lose on the human touch.
yes. But then also, one of the other aspects is it will also allow for diversity, because I foresee a situation where, for example, if we start using drones more at site, maybe there's information that needs to be coded that can only be done by a human.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
changes how we would do the documentation for sites, for example. So that means admins will have to be a bit more technical, because now you're not just filling in a normal RFP or filling in a normal site requisition. Now you have to figure out that there's a system or a software that you need to use to get you coordinates or get you that. So I think AI is not to be feared. It's just that AI means we need to step up, but then also remember machines cannot do everything.
Yeah, true. And actually it also makes your work easier, if there are things that if you previously had to populate Excel sheets, edit Word documents and edit PDFs, it makes that work easier, so that now when you adopt AI, you just give it a few inputs and it gives you some results as admin, isn't it?
Yeah.
And just having that background as an admin, if it's myself, for example, if I'm going to ask AI to maybe plan a trip for me, there are certain key aspects that I might miss out on that you as an admin would not miss out on, So if, just as an example, if me and you are given an AI bot and we are asked to request it to plan a trip, for example, me working on it and you working on it are going to give two very different results.
Exactly.
The results that you are going to get are going to be thoroughly detailed compared to me, a layman. So just reaffirming what you're saying, that in as much as AI is coming to assist, most of our careers we need to, number one, step up, and at the same time find a way to embrace it to make our work easier, and not necessarily see it as a threat. This thing is going to phase us out rather of the marketplace and whatnot, isn't it?
It's true, because even a very good example when you talk about travel is sometimes you get a project in an area you've never been. So part of what we have to do is we have to do a recon visit. So now imagine if you have Google Docs has been super refined to the point that you can zoom in on an area and find out which are the hotels that exist there, what are the landmarks, what roads. So then you're not spending that initial upfront fees of sending a team there on the ground physically to tell you, okay, so people will stay here, this is where they will get their food, this is what they will need to move, this is the local transport available. But now you're able to get all of that maybe at the press of a button or a few photos. So it even reduces the operating costs. So AI is, I know a lot of people are scared about AI, and it doesn't help because we grew up watching things like RoboCop and watching shows that
and
just
looking
made
forward to
you,
when this will actually
yes.
come to
So
exist.
you see the scary part of what happens when AI goes wrong. But then we also don't stop and think, what about what happens if AI does what it's supposed to do, which is just try and make our lives easier. Think about drones. Now we can take photos at angles we never thought possible.
True. True.
Before,
True.
you'd have to pay a videographer a lot of money, then you have to pay for the helicopter, and then even then there are shots they will not be able to take.
Yeah.
But now with a simple drone, it's something simple. So
Mm.
it's for us to understand which are the ones that will be affecting us.
Mm.
Because if it's something like drafting a document better,
Mm.
right now we have things like ChatGPT, we have Gemini,
Mm.
but I can still tell you a document that was written by ChatGPT and a document that was written by a person,
Mm.
because it's all about what inputs did you put in.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Interesting. Interesting. And are there any innovative technologies that you are applying, of course, apart from adoption of AI?
So there's the small ones, but the one that I'm excited about personally is Power BI. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason is earlier this year I did a short course about Power BI
Mm.
just to try and understand what it is. And I like the idea of having a dashboard that
Mm.
at a glance, because right now we have our information is scattered all over.
Mm.
And they say that a lot of things are lost in data because
Mm.
there's so much data coming at you at any given moment. So if you're not able to sift through that data and get the meaningful points, then you lose it.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I'm looking at and trying to introduce for my team is how do we create a dashboard so that at a glance you can
Mm-hmm.
see this is how much we've spent on requisitions, this is how much we've spent on reimbursements, these are the pending ones, this is what we're doing on accommodation, so that you can see the actual numbers, because numbers don't lie.
True.
So once you're able to see all of that, then it's easier to say, actually, that admin budget that you're giving me may not work. And you're able to now say, this is the reason it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Then that way you're also able to see, actually, we need to replace certain equipment by date Y.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not forever, you're not coming to me, for example, and saying, the seats, I sat on my seat and it fell.
Mm.
Now, I, as Maryanne, may know, actually, that's because that seat needs to be replaced.
Mm.
But when I
True.
put in a requisition, maybe it's an issue for, oh, but had you budgeted for it? But you see, if I have a dashboard, then you can also see that seats need to be replaced after 7 years because we'll put in such details. Then it's not a fight with I go to finance for, why are you buying new seats? You just bought seats last year.
Mm.
Or they're like, oh, why do you want to buy this seat versus this seat? Then I can tell them, actually, because this comes with a 5-year warranty, it might come with a higher price tag, but we get the benefit of a longer warranty.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a longer shelf life. So such small things are some of the things that are coming up and would make a difference. Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. So basically, what you're saying is now with this new software, you're able to see, or rather, it's basically able to summarize for you the entire admin in one dashboard. So instead of having to be keeping tabs on several Excel sheets, you have an Excel sheet for furniture, you have an Excel sheet for travel, you have an Excel sheet for A, B, C, D. You have one source or one common point where you're able to, at the click of a button, see everything that is going on within the admin. And yeah.
Because think about it, right now we have one for requisitions and reimbursements, we have one for accommodation, we have one for assets, we have one for travel. So you can imagine all of those. But now if you consolidate all that information, then it gets very easy for you to track and see, oh, by the way, this is what is happening. While, for example, we're booking too many travels that don't happen, or we're booking too much late travel. And so having to pay a premium. It's very different when I'm telling you that as the CFO, for example, and I'm now showing you a graph that shows that last month we booked 20 additional tickets at premium when we could have.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. And what do you believe are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing as admin?
That disconnect. I think the disconnect between because again, remember, admin is a lot of behind the scenes. So sometimes someone will not understand, why am I giving you grief over something as simple as, when I think of a random example of whether or not you have 2 cups of tea. But for me, I'm doing the math for X number of packets need to serve X number of people. So if you add an additional 2-3 people, that messes up the equation. The same way, if you're thinking about X bags of cement plus this ensures whether that floor is stable or not, it's the same thing. But you see, you'll be thinking, but I need that tea to concentrate. Why are you on my case over?
I need my
like
coffee.
You're being petty. Like, why?
You know, engineers, we need our coffee.
Yeah. And you want premium coffee, or you come and tell me, why are we?
You can't give us boiled coffee. In fact, we've been asking for a coffee machine.
It's there
for the longest time.
So it's the small things as well as the big things, because part of admin is we need to be able to be cost conscious. So it's little things. I think people smile and they'll see me come and switch off the lights after they use the boardroom, and they'll be like, oh yeah, we forgot. Like, yeah, I give you a look for but it's something small. But you can imagine if you keep lights running for no reason, how does that trickle down in terms of the costs?
Over time, actually.
Yes. Or we'll have, for example, people going somewhere, and then someone shows up 2 minutes later and says, oh, I was also going there. And we need to sort you out.
And the first guys have already left.
Yes, and they had space. They had space. You know, it's one thing when they leave and there was no space.
Yeah.
This one is, you've had maybe a vehicle go with 2 people, and then an hour later someone is like, oh yeah, I also need to go. Yeah. So it's, or another one that really gets me, someone travels to go take a meeting virtually. I don't get that one. Like, I'm like, so we took you to Mombasa for you to sit in the house and work remotely. Like, so why did you just work remotely in Nairobi? Like, no, I needed to. I'm like,
someone was taking a holiday on the company's dime.
yeah. So it's having those conversations and really pushing for, okay, yeah. I think I keep having a lot of conversations because our people like to do things last minute, and these are things that are not last minute.
Yeah.
So you've known that your job needs you to travel at an X number of times a month, but then you still wait until 2 days to when you're supposed to travel to let me know. So we're scrambling, we're doing weekend things of booking travel over the weekend. So I'm like, we don't need to. We don't need this
drivers to be
hassle.
called at the last minute to pick you up, drop you somewhere. Yeah.
Or I'm in the middle. For example, you'll find you're doing whatever it is you're doing over the weekend, and then you're being called to sort out someone's travel, and you're like, imagine we could have done this yesterday during office working hours. Yeah. Wow. So those are some of the main challenges. Yeah.
And have you had any significant failures so far in your career?
Oh, that's a hard
one. Or in your...
That's a hard one. I think I don't know if I'd call it a significant failure, but just what I was alluding to earlier, that the systems and processes. So especially at the beginning, I struggled because naturally I'm a planner and I'm organized. So there was just so much chaos. And one of the things I had to do was just set up those systems, for example, set up the policies, draft policies. I remember griping about it and just been told, okay, then just design a policy since it doesn't exist, and setting up those systems. And I can say now we're doing way better, because right now we're even in the process of getting ISO certified, which is a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
Like, if you've worked for a place where they're ISO certified, you know the level of detail that goes into that. So just being part of that process has helped. Yeah, we're not there yet, but I think we're doing way better.
Yeah,
Or maybe I've just gotten a thicker skin, who knows? Could be.
Yeah, could be. But then I also believe that just developing systems and actually getting to see these systems work and make your work easier,
Yes.
that's something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it? Getting to a place where things are working, yes, but there are no systems. And then now you get to generate systems, get to generate policies that you see them simplifying your work and simplifying work for other people, you know. That must be quite accomplishing.
It is. And even the fact that now I can actually take leave and not feel like things will fall apart.
Yeah.
There's no Chinwachebe thing that will happen here.
Yeah.
Because I've had situations where leave was leave, okay.
You
Just
leave,
carry your
but
laptop, make
yes.
sure your phone is close by, make sure you have network. But now, having getting the team to the point where they can actually operate to a certain extent, almost
autonomously,
yeah, it's a huge achievement. Yeah.
All right, all right. And could you also just touch rather on how, as the admin office, you're handling sustainability and environment? Is there a role that your team is playing to help the company achieve that?
So sustainability is one of the things that's a passion for me as an individual. So part of that was translated into I was the lead for the sustainability pillar when we had pillars. But as a department, one of the things we do is we try and be very green conscious. And so we were at the forefront of just trying to push the organization to go paperless. So we realized from the get-go, a lot of paper that is generated, a large percentage is admin related. Because remember, projects, we have a lot of requisitions, we have a lot of reimbursements. And we just started pushing, can we have this on soft? Why does this have to be an actual document? And slowly this started catching on with other departments who were like, no, send me a soft copy. I don't need a physical copy. And the uptake was a bit slow to begin with, but now we can honestly say that actually, I think 100% of all requisitions are
virtual.
virtual.
Yeah.
So that's a big.
I remember there's a time when a traveling requisition, if I wanted to travel, I'd print out the blank form, fill it and sign it. And then my supervisor is not in Nairobi. I have to scan it and send it to them.
Yes.
They print it, sign on it. And this document has about 4 or 5 signatures. Yes. And then, because now the final authority, or rather you guys, admin is in Nairobi, he's printed and signed it. He scans it again and sends it again back. And then it's reprinted now the third time. So by the time, and that is just one requisition to travel.
And how remember, many sheets of paper? You'll come back and claim a reimbursement. So you'll have to do the whole process in reverse.
Oh my goodness. And every time this document is being printed, after it's sent out, the printout becomes redundant. Yeah. Isn't it? Yes. Because the one that I printed and scanned, the moment I sent
only has one signature.
Yes. So whatever is coming from Mombasa, whatever printed, I have to shred it.
Yeah. Wow. And I remember because at that point, IT was something I was overseeing. So I remember having that conversation with Kitheka and asking him, we can't give people e-signatures, everyone, and just have one document. And I like the fact that, especially when you work with the young people, they're very quick. So Kitheka ran with it. He ran with it, and then my job was just to push for it to become something that is adopted all over. Because remember, admin was also handling the leave. So if an individual needed to take leave, especially in Mombasa, it needed to go through admin. And remember, our leave form is like 4 pages.
Wow, yeah.
So we even had folders. Like now, if you go to our Mombasa office, we have folders for people's leave forms.
Yeah.
And then there's the reimbursements. Then there is our drivers filled in a form. showing where have they taken people, so they'd actually fill it in. So we had that, which would be scanned at the end of the month. So it's a lot of paper.
Wow, I can imagine. Now, but we've not even touched the engineering team.
Yes.
Because now, hapo sasa, if you were worried about A4,
Yes.
now you're dealing with A3s and A2s.
Let me tell you. So it's for the engineering team, we still haven't won it completely because our engineers still have a love relationship with paper. That's how I'd put it. So they tell you, I
there's
need to
something.
see, like, I need to
Yes,
see an act. I'm like,
there's
why?
something about doing a review
Why?
on a printout.
No,
I need to.
no.
It's the visibility when I'm looking at that drawing.
No. You guys have expensive software, but you will still print 20 pages of one. And then you will make one, like I usually come and see, you've just made one writing on that drawing. You've circled something. Then you go and leave your 20 pages there. And then it has to be in color. Why? Because apparently, I don't know this, the red is for, I don't know, electrical, green is who. I'm just like,
it's called standards, Maryanne.
but now you
Standards,
see, when
color
it comes back to me,
Mm.
we pay a rate for the number of copies we print in color, number of copies we print in black and white.
I think admin needs to have a seminar with engineers
Let me tell you.
in the company so that you give us this breakdown to be how much the company will save if we reduced on our printing.
Fun fact. We have a very high volume of the black and whites. We have never, ever met it. We have a lower volume for the colors because colors is more expensive. We are always doubling or tripling that.
Wow.
Yes. And this is something I think we've tried having a conversation about, even with HSC, with the engineers, but you're like, I think you listen and then it comes out the other year.
Yeah, when you get out of that boardroom,
you're like,
you're like,
okay.
These guys don't understand engineering.
Yeah, and you move on with your life. So it's, and you see, it translates to all the piles of paper lying around. Because one of the things that now we struggle with in terms of us trying to see how to be sustainable is, can we destroy them? So we cannot tell, for example, if I come to an engineer's desk and he has all these printouts, he or she, whether is this paper that I can destroy?
Or is this still in use?
Yes. So we had a very interesting time when we were trying to clean out our cupboards. And I think it took us a couple of hours, and it was a big thing. I remember I had to come in on a Saturday because I tried getting my team to do it, and they're like, but we don't know what we can destroy and what we cannot destroy. So I remember taking a Saturday and just going through documents after documents,
checking the dates, checking the relevance.
Yeah, and at some point it was just making an executive decision for trash it, and we had so many boxes.
Wow.
Yeah, so that, and then also trying to find cost savings in the other things. I think that's how we've tried to be sustainable. But then also, one of the things that admin does is we try and create a lot of spaces for people to connect. So whether it's organizing for CSR events, organizing for hangouts, organizing for ways to give back to the community, like the recent CSR where we did a visit to the children's home. So admin plays a very key role in that. So that's how we try and, because when we talk about sustainability, you're looking at the ESG. So you're looking at the environmental, the social, and the governance.
Yeah.
So we try and really incorporate the social aspect as well as the environmental. Yeah, governance we may not have as much to play. But the E and the S we do. Yeah.
All right. So Maryanne, you've mentioned in the previous when you're talking the previous comment, you mentioned something about CSR and how your department touches a lot on people. So how do you see your role contributing to societal improvement, or how does your department pretty much interact with the society?
So you decided to keep the heavy questions for the end. No, it's for, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
But I think it's the human aspect. One of the things that admin does is that it tries to build bridges. And how it does that is just by connecting people. So whether it's organizing for a game night, or it's a CSR event where we're bringing people and we're allowing them to just give back. So what admin does is we do the curating of the experience, in a sense. We're like your travel agent, if you have a travel agent. So we'll go, we'll scout the place, we'll decide, and we'll come back and tell you, hey guys, this is what we're doing. So for example, something we do every year around this time is the Secret Santa. And I hope a lot of us have signed up. So what we do is we're pretty much saying we'll match you with a stranger, but not a stranger. Maybe this is someone you've interacted with. It's usually very random. And you buy them a gift. We put a cap on it for the minimum, but nothing for the maximum. And we have fun. Like, there's nothing as amazing as seeing, if it's a child receiving a gift, like when we did the CSR, or even a colleague seeing how much value you placed on them in terms of the gift you give them. So like last year, when we did the Secret Santa, and our guys really showed up, I was so proud. It felt like, oh, I have done well. Because you could see people put thought into the gifts. You could see that people actually took the time to study their people, because we've had near misses as well. We've had people get very weird gifts. And when I mean weird, I mean weird in the sense of the person didn't stop to think about that person. So for example, let's say you get a female, right? But you've not taken the time to even observe a little. Like I remember we had a year where somebody got a set of jewelry. But this person, because of their religious beliefs, does not wear jewelry. Like they've not even pierced their ears, and they've gotten this very expensive. It was pretty, it was expensive.
All the other ladies are admiring it.
Yeah.
Apart from the person the gift is for.
So it's that little attention to detail, which is what admin does, because we'll come and tell you, okay, because we don't randomly tell you we're gonna go for dinner at this place. We'll have gone to the venue. We'll even at some point have tasted the food. So we go, a lot goes back into, like even when we're having a staff event, a lot goes into the initial planning. You just don't find yourself randomly being told, come to this place. So even when we're telling you, you need to dress like this, you need to be here at a certain time, it's because we've stopped to put in the work before it. So that's what we do, because we understand that if we can create these bonds, remember, businesses are built on relationships. And you may not think this is a business when you're thinking about your colleague, but if you're not able to understand your colleague and work with them, it's harder to collaborate. So we try and one of the things we try and do is we're ensuring that the teams are collaborating by creating spaces outside work, but then at the same time we're also giving the individuals a sense of, when you come and build, for example, this big plant, how does it affect the community? So now when you come back to that same community and maybe go to a children's home in the area, then you understand also those are the needs for these people. And then you also give them the benefit, if it's a children's home, you give them the benefit of these children seeing someone who can be a role model, so that they know that this is not all they get. Because we all started dreaming because of something we saw.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that, because at a personal level, I remember previously, before we started doing these CSR and the social events, you'd interact with a colleague at work and it should be all formal. You know, you get a request for a deliverable from a colleague, and you see it with all the formality, but then you get to interact with this person outside of the office. You're doing a hike somewhere, for example, you've gone for a CSR somewhere, or you're doing Secret Santa with them, and you get to interact with them at a personal level, so that by the time you're coming back to the office, when you get an email from them, you're not seeing Maryanne the admin, you're seeing Maryanne, the lady I was hiking with the other day. And your approach to them is a bit softer and a bit more acceptable. You know, so just the fact that these activities and events that we do outside the office bring some level of personal touch, even as we're doing our work, and also helps us, you know, deliver in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, because we often say that open plan seating is supposed to build collaboration, but really, not, it doesn't. All you'll do is you'll sit in your cubicle or in your spot and do what it is that you're paid to do. But if you go for lunch with someone, then you discover, oh, Brian doesn't eat meat, for example. And then you discover, oh, but he likes this. Then it allows you to interact with him on another level. So you'd be like, oh, wait, I saw this and I know he likes this. And that's how you find, like for us who have projects in Mombasa, after a while, someone will go to Mombasa and bring mabuyu for people in the office. Not just for their friends. They'll be like, I know Akina Nani like mabuyu, so there'll be packets of mabuyu going around.
True.
It's not a lot, but it makes such a big difference. Like someone comes and brings 4 packets of mabuyu. You may only eat 2 mabuyus from that packet.
Yeah. But the fact that they were thoughtful enough to come back with something from Mombasa.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. So that's what builds collaborations, and that's what builds teamwork, because then you find it's not emails going around. If you have something that needs to be sorted out by another engineer, you'll walk to their desk and tell them, hey, by the way, I need help with this. They have deadlines, but because you've already built that relationship, they'll be like, okay, let me sort you out.
Yeah. True. And I've even noticed that sometimes, even when, you know, sometimes there are emails I've received from someone and I'm like, no, this is not coming from them. You know, this is handwriting yake. And they've been asked to send this email, you know, because it's someone you know at a personal level, you've interacted with them. And sometimes even when someone is making, when you interact with them at a personal level, sometimes even when, like, for example, when you get a requisition late, you're able to tell Ujama, I remember he'd mentioned he had this family issue, there's something he's dealing with, maybe there's exams that are keeping him sleep till late. So when you get, when you notice that there's maybe some lapse in how they're doing their work, it kind of, you don't, or rather how you react to it is not the same way you'd react if you had not known them. So basically just bringing that human and empathetic element when working with colleagues.
I think even a good example is if you were in a good school, the teachers that stood out for you, or even if you were in a bad school and you had 1 or 2 good teachers, it's the teacher who remembered the details. It's the teacher who will be like, oh, wait, this needed to be, you understood this concept, so help so and so who's not doing as well. Or it's the teacher who will be like, okay, because I know you have practice, which may have nothing to do with them, they'll be like, I know on Wednesdays you need to leave early. So because you need to leave early, I need you to do XYZ. And you're like, oh, wait, you remember? Okay. The teacher will tell you, your parent needs to do XYZ, so remember this. So that is what makes for the teacher who stands out for you. Because I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine who ended up studying statistics. And she was explaining that the reason why she even ended up loving maths is because how they would do it was the teacher would come after the exam and then pick out the questions that people failed and then teach those concepts. So they'd come and say, okay, how many of you failed question 1? Then they do, depending on the numbers, then they teach you. If they see maybe only 2 people failed question 1, but then like 10 others, so they'd be like, oh, so and so, you need to teach Anani that. And so in that process, nobody was ever victimized for failing. But then at the same time, they always ensured that everyone got each concept. So when they switched schools to a school where the focus was, you're failing because of what? Even their math tanked. Like their grades started tanking. So you realize that how we present information makes a very big difference. Yeah.
Maryanne, talk to us more about your work. Are there aspects of it that you really enjoy?
I think the people interacting with the people and the planning.
Your work revolves. You've mentioned a lot about your interactions with people. You really must enjoy that, yeah?
I don't know. Well, I don't know if I do. I keep telling people I'm an introvert and nobody believes me, but I am. Yeah, but I enjoy that and the planning because I'm the sort of person who sees 3 steps ahead. So it either works out really well because I'll be the person telling you what could go wrong, or I will anticipate what could go wrong and plan for it. Yeah.
Ah, interesting. And could you just tell us about any moment in your role or in your career that you found particularly rewarding?
Navigating COVID. I think I mentioned it earlier, but I think that was a big test because it meant for us, because we are a project-based organization, our sites could not close. So it meant we needed to figure out how do we support our teams, and having half the team working remotely and then still having to work physically. So just navigating that, there were a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, can
and
imagine.
a lot of learning on the go. So we just had we had a lot of meetings. We had regular stand-up meetings. We needed to know how to support our teams when they ended up contracting the disease. So all of that, just we needed to know how to move things, move people, and still pretty much operate with very limited resources and a lot of curfews and whatnot. So just navigating that and keeping our sanity, because one of the other things we had to deal with was the isolation.
Yeah.
So how we could support our teams who were stuck at home. Yeah, that was a big thing. So we organized meetups virtually.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, we had
People had stayed almost
conversations.
a whole year, without any social event.
Yeah,
Yeah,
game nights.
I remember virtual game nights.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting. I remember COVID caused a very big logistical and administrative nightmare. So just trying to imagine you getting right in the middle of it, and
Yeah.
you mentioned you were barely
6 months in.
6 months into the responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now you have to oversee this very big organization, and these you use the word apocalypse. This situation happens, and now you have to navigate through it.
Yeah.
And you did quite well, because here we are.
Imagine.
It's the first time actually or rather we embraced working from home. All the struggles that came with that. Things as just like you've said, handling or rather taking care of colleagues who contracted the disease.
Yeah.
Coming up with places like an isolation
room.
Yeah.
Also dealing with a lot of our staff is single and they are young. So now you're imagining that people are in isolation by themselves. Yeah. And for many people, they had never spent that much time alone. So navigating that, supporting them through that, it's a big deal.
Okay. Welcome back, good people. We had to take a bit of a short break there for our host to grab a glass of water. Right. So as we proceed, any memorable moment that you've had in your career?
Mount Kenya. So a couple of years back, I floated a very interesting concept for can we get the team to climb Mount Kenya? So I was asked what will it take, and I was just like, we just need to do 7 to 8 hikes in preparation, and the team that's fit enough will go up. And challenge was accepted. I was
Wow.
told, you have a carte blanche, go ahead.
Wow. So wait, you know,
Mm-hmm.
most of the guys that we've had on this, when we ask them the same question,
Mm-hmm.
most of them mention Mount Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
So you are the originator
Yes,
of Mount Kenya.
yes.
Tell us more about it.
So one of the things I really enjoy doing is hiking.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, I realized that it's a very good way
Mm-hmm.
to build camaraderie. And one of the things we were struggling with, I got to be part of almost like a think tank
Mm-hmm.
when we're trying to see what are the challenges at Synergetic. And we realized that working in silos,
Mm-hmm.
it kept coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So a solution for that was to what can we do to help people, especially to break down these silos.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, how about hiking? Because it
Mm-hmm.
allows people from different departments to get together. And so I floated the idea to management, and for some reason I had favor. So
Amen.
yeah, so that's how I set it up. I was told, go ahead. And I remember really pushing because I'm a planner. So I kept saying, okay, so what's my budget so that I know what can I do, what can I not do. And I was told, just bring them. Let's see. So I remember the first one we did Table Mountain.
No, the first one was it Ngong Hills?
No, Ngong Hills was like the third.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
It was Table
Table
Mountain.
Mountain was the first one.
Yeah, I
So
remember. I
it was,
remember.
and then again, one of the benefits of being of them being the planner is, I was like, we are gonna do hikes that I have not done. So actually, an interesting fact: the only hike that I ended up repeating was Longonot.
Oh, really?
But all the other 8 hikes were all new hikes for me as well.
Mm,
Because I was like, why am I going for a hike that I've already done?
mm,
So our people signed up,
mm-hmm.
and that's how the journey began.
Yeah.
And after 8 hikes, we were ready. People
Mm,
started shopping for the gear,
yeah.
and people were like, we can do this.
Mm,
Yeah, and a team of us, I think we were 13,
mm-hmm.
went up the mountain, and I can I can safely say we all summited.
True,
Yeah,
true. Ah, that was an experience, and we are going to touch on it because allegations were made.
which I have had, and I am here to
Allegations were made,
to refute those allegations,
and
because what do you mean?
and to set the record straight.
Yes,
Uh,
it needs to be set straight.
so we'll get a chance to tackle, or rather, I'll give you. It's called the right of response, isn't
Mm-hmm.
it? We'll give you the right of response because someone
Who
sat
shall remain unnamed?
shall remain unnamed, sat on that same proverbial seat, and they made certain allegations against one Maryanne, and we promised to bring you so that you could actually get to respond to those allegations. All right. So in your previous comment, you mentioned something about planning hikes and just planning events and taking us through to the last, I believe, the apex of it or the peak of it. Puns intended was summiting Mount Kenya.
Mhm.
So, is this your hobby, or what generally are your hobbies, and how do they help or affect how you deliver on your role as an admin?
So, climbing mountains is one of my hobbies, as well
Wow.
as running marathons.
Mm.
Um,
Any interesting marathons that you've done?
so I've done Kili Marathon,
Kilimanjaro, that
yes,
is.
Kilimanjaro Marathon. I've done
Mm-hmm.
it the 2 years in a row now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually started as a very interesting conversation. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was telling them
Mm.
how I wanted to
Sorry.
do a bit more travel, and they were
Mm-hmm.
like, but you like running, so how about you combine the two?
Mm.
And they told me to consider taking up the Kilimanjaro Marathon, and I was like,
Mm.
okay. Then during one of our preparation hikes,
Mm.
actually no, we were training for the Stanchart Marathon,
Mm.
and I got into a conversation with one of our members,
Mm.
and we started talking about running an international marathon, what would it
Mm.
take.
Mm.
And he very flippantly just told me, but that's not expensive. Like, it's very easy. And I went away from that conversation and I was like, you know what? I keep talking about it, but I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
So I remember I went home and I just checked when is the marathon, and it was happening in February because it happens every year in February. And I looked at the charges, and it was actually very affordable. It was actually cheaper to run an international marathon as opposed to running a local marathon.
Yeah, and you know that's actually the interesting thing, because most people think that if I'd rather register for Stanchart, which is 2,000 bob, because the assumption is Kilimanjaro or Ruenzori or these ones are going to be more expensive.
Exactly.
You know, so I think at some point we'd want to just give us a typical breakdown for someone who's on a budget. How much would it cost them to maybe attend Kili Marathon and then maybe Kigali? Because I believe you mentioned you've done Kigali as well.
I've done. So this year I've done Kigali. So this year I added 2 other international ones. So I did Kigali, and then I also did Ruenzori. Yeah. So a typical budget, pretty much, if we try and break it down,
Mkulima
the
mdogo
cost
budget.
will come. So pretty much entry fee, like for the Kilimanjaro Marathon, is less than 2,000. Because so
Kenya
the
shillings,
fee,
eh?
yes,
Not
Kenya shillings.
Tanzania.
So
Yeah.
depending on who's organizing the marathon, so you'll pay it in a different currency. But now when you do the conversion, you'll find that a lot of international marathons are usually less than 2,000 Kenya shillings. So Kili is actually one of the more expensive ones because it gets you to 1,900 and something. But the rest, like Ruenzori, I think is 1,600. Kigali is even cheaper. It's like 1,200. So I think Kili, because they've seen a lot of Kenyans are participating, so it's a lot more expensive. So that's the first fee you need to think about.
That's the registration fee.
Yes,
To
because
get
that's
you
the
to
first thing to allow you to actually get to run the marathon. Then now you have to think about getting there. Usually you just do a bus, like I'd do the bus. A return trip is 5,000. So round trip, because it's 2,500, 2,500. Then now you have to think about accommodation and meals. So that's where you'd probably end up spending money, because it depends on what kind of accommodation you want. But generally between from as little as 1,500, you could even get accommodation for 1,000 Kenya shillings, all the way to as high as you want to go. Same with meals, because it all depends on what you want to eat. Yeah. But I remember, like, the first time I did the Kili Marathon, I spent 10,000. All inclusive. And I stayed in a very posh place.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's, again, it's usually the fear. It's more of the fear than anything else, because we think about. But then also remember, I already have a passport. So if you don't have a passport, you have to think about that. But then again, a temporary passport is only 700 shillings. So again, you don't have a lot of complications. So it's one, are you gonna do other things when you get to that country? And how much are you willing to spend? But it is doable.
So basically the only expenses here that would probably have the potential of going high are maybe the accommodation and meals.
Exactly.
But in terms of transport, that's pretty much, you could
It's
book a
standard.
return ticket for a bus or a plane, for example, depending on what
Your
you're able
budget.
to afford, your budget. Food and accommodation, again, depending on your budget and depending on what you want to go experience. You could want to go and stay there for a few days, learn a bit of Kiswahili before you come back.
Yeah. And then the other thing to think about is if you're a runner, there are a lot of running groups, and they usually organize these trips for their team members, and they open it up to outsiders. So that also gives you the option of, if you don't want to think about the different logistics, like you're like, I just want something where I'm being told where to arrive and what, and everything has been done for me, because I have a lot of people who will tell me, I'm not like you. I don't want to plan. I don't want to think about such things. I want everything is done. In such a case, they give you the option of paying slowly. So they'll tell you, this is the entire amount you need and pay. And this is what you're going to get. They give you options for accommodation. They tell you what it comes with, whether it's bed and breakfast or it's half board. Yeah.
Of course, going to come at a bit of a premium because again they have to make profit.
Yes.
But still, it's an option for someone who doesn't want to dive into the details.
Yeah.
You just want to be picked somewhere in town. You're taken for the trip,
and you will be dropped
and you're dropped back.
Exactly.
You know, but then again, it's not as expensive. It might not get to 20K, would it?
It depends. It depends on who you use. Sometimes it might get as high as 30. Again, but then you see, it's also depending on the options you take. Because they'll give you options of if you want to stay in a 2-star, a 3-star, a 4-star, if you want half board, full board. You see, that also raises the price. Yeah, because most times you want to stay at a hotel and then give yourself the option of exploring the town to eat your meals. Yeah.
It's interesting because I remember you've mentioned that you did Rwenzori, and I don't know whether you've also mentioned that you did it with a team.
So that's the interesting part because I think so I've done it by myself in terms of the first time I did Kili, and I realized as much as you have many Kenyans, it's a bit lonely. So this time around, this year, I dragged a few colleagues along. So I remember I bumped into one of my colleagues when I was doing Kili, I bumped into one of my colleagues at the bus station. Turns out we were both going for the same event.
And you didn't know.
Same company, but we didn't know. So that was pretty cool. But for the other 2 marathons, I was very intentional. I was like, you know what? I invited people. So we got to do it with a few friends, and it was so much fun. Because you realize that it gets lonely. You're in a foreign country, you have all these Kenyans around you, but they're friends. Like they run together, they do things together. So
True. I was actually alluding to how when we did the Rwenzori one, you know, you'd expect, because Rwenzori Marathon is the farthest end of Uganda.
Yes.
And I remember we carpooled 3 people. Actually supposed to be 4.
Yeah.
One
then someone
person
dropped at
the last minute, you know.
Yeah. Painful.
But anyway, 3 people. And just to inform guys of how far Rwenzori is, we did a whole day from Busia, just crossing Uganda all the way to the very end. On the other side, actually, it was 100 km from DRC, you know, and that whole trip, how many days? It was 3 or 4 days.
3.
3 days. And going for 3 days doing the marathon, all inclusive, you know, I did the math, the cost came to about 15,000 per person.
Yeah.
You know.
And that's plus fuel.
Plus fuel, and you've gone by road. You've not used a bus. If you were to use a bus, I don't know, probably would have been cheaper. Yeah. So just informing guys that these things are actually doable.
Yeah.
And they're not as expensive as you'd actually initially think, and the experience that you get.
And remember, fun fact, because when we went for Rwenzori, I remember us guys did 21. But you did 10.
I did 10.
Yeah, like it was, you are like, I'm not ready for 21 kilometers.
I know myself. I want a race I can finish.
Yeah, so when the rest of us are here busy dying and questioning our life choices, you were finished, you were rested, you were at the finish line. So it is doable. That's the other beauty about international marathons.
I have photos and videos of guys coming to the finish line 21 kms later.
Which shall not be unleashed.
Talk to me nicely. If you want to see photos of people struggling to finish a 21-kilometer race. Yeah, interesting.
So that's one of my hobbies. The other one is climbing mountains. So I've actually done Mount Kenya again. I climbed Mount Kenya again earlier this year.
Nice.
But it was in preparation for a climb I did for Kilimanjaro. So this year I have climbed 2 major mountains.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. The tallest freestanding mountain in the world.
Yes, that is Kilimanjaro.
Yes. And
let me tell you,
Maina.
The Kenyans who lie and tell you that Kilimanjaro, Kilimanjaro is just longer.
But it's easier than Mount Kenya.
No, it is not. There's a reason it is the tallest freestanding mountain
in the world.
So it is. So I was doing it for a good cause. I was raising support for a charity called New Life Trust. So they rescue abandoned children, babies and infants, and then they try and they also provide adoption. So they have so they were raising money for that. They've been in existence in Kenya for the last 30 years. So this was to coincide with their 30-year anniversary. So they have branches in Nairobi. They're actually just across from us on Glenana Road. They have that branch. They have another in Nyeri and Kisumu. So and we're still raising money, by the way. Yeah. So we needed to raise a certain amount.
Yeah. So probably you can have our just put some.
Yeah. The pay bill.
Yes, pay
yeah,
bill
there's a
and
pay
contact.
bill.
Yeah.
So it was just telling friends about it, raising the amount. I made it to the halfway mark, so I still have quite a bit to raise. And the beauty was we were still, because initially the thought was the conversation was we wouldn't climb if we didn't meet a certain threshold. But then along the way we got a donor, which allowed us to still climb. Yeah. So because I'd wanted, after climbing Mount Kenya, I'd wanted to climb Kilimanjaro. So I was like, you know what? Let me climb it for a reason, as opposed to just
for
ticking
fun.
a box. Yeah. So that's one of the main things, because even when I do marathons, most marathons are for a good cause. It's not just about the medal. So you're either raising money for charity or you are it's not just fun. So there's usually a cause attached to it. So it made sense to also ensure that and actually, interesting fact, when I climbed Kenya earlier this year, I was also helping to raise awareness about autism. So we were climbing to just get to raise some awareness about autism, and it happened to coincide with Autism Month in April. So we came down on 1st of April. Yeah. So I was raising it. I was doing it with people who part of the Society of Autism in Kenya. Yeah, because it's again something that is not as well known as it should be, as much as we're having a lot more children struggling from autism. Or suffering from autism.
All right. Interesting to see that you found a way to combine your hobby and giving back, you know, and just bring a lot of awareness to some of these issues that would otherwise go unnoticed. All right. All right.
My other hobby is reading. I'm known as the person who always has a book. Yeah, so I love reading, and I'm a voracious reader. I read anything and everything. I think the only thing, I keep laughing and saying the only thing I don't read are self-help books.
I hope it's not because you don't need self-help.
No, I don't know. I never got into the self-help genre. Yeah, that one I'm just always like.
Any interesting reads, books that have stood out for you?
I'm right now I'm going through a phase where I'm reading a lot of books about the Second World War. So I've just finished reading a book called The Choice. It's written by Dr. Eva Egler. And she's a Holocaust survivor, and it's her memoir. And what she did after she survived the Holocaust was to become a psychologist who deals with trauma. So she deals with clients who've experienced trauma. And so what I do, because I read a lot, is I'll probably come across, how I came across her was she was recently featured on O by Oprah, because she's 94 years old and she's still doing it. So she's her story is very interesting, because now she's a grandma, but she's still been called by the Pentagon, she's been called by Navy SEALs to deal with soldiers who have just come from combat, and now they're dealing with trauma and they don't know what to do. So she's become a leader in that field, and it was very interesting to see a grandma who dresses in Chanel. Please note, Chanel, designer top to bottom.
Wow.
And then she always finishes her lectures with a high kick. So a high kick is if you've ever seen ballet, when you see someone just do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Those of
That's
us who
how,
watch Kung Fu movies.
yes, that is how that's her signature move after every lecture. So I
Now,
was like, so
now I'm
when I
curious to
heard
watch one
about
of her
it, I was
lectures.
like, oh, I need to find out Dr. Edgar's and understand
Mm,
what is she all about. So
mm,
I've just finished that, and it's very interesting because she talks about how our past should not get to define us. It
mm,
is there,
mm,
but sometimes we give our past too much future that it
mm,
affects our present.
mm,
Yeah. So I've really enjoyed reading about it. Yeah, because that's why her book is even called about the choice, because she had to make a decision about whether to be a victim for the rest of her life,
mhm,
or would she allow what she had gone through to just shape her and her
mm.
growth. Yeah. So
Wow.
I've just finished that. I'm currently reading a book called The German Girl.
Mhm,
So this is a fictional account of something that happened in the middle of World War II that I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, because already what was going on in World War II is hard
mm,
to understand.
yeah.
But then there was an ocean liner with
Mm,
nine with 936 people on board.
mhm,
They had already paid for passage to America and Cuba. So Cuba was supposed to be their first port of call, and then they continue. So it was part of the Hamburg American line, which still exists to this day, by the way.
mhm.
And they were turned away. And
Okay.
out of 936 people,
Mm.
I think only 57 survived.
Okay, by turned away, you mean they're not allowed to dock?
Yes,
They're out of supplies, they're
yes,
out of
yes,
all these things,
yes,
they asked to turn back.
yes. And the world turned their back on those people. As
Mm.
in, I'm trying to wrap my head around. I'm reading the story and I'm like, wait. And the reason
How?
why even this person wrote the book is because I think their great grandma was
Mm.
one of the survivors. And it's
Mm.
one part of history that's not talked about,
Mm. I think that
because
would
the
make
world
international
does not want to
headlines.
talk about how they turned away people and
Mm.
allowed them. It's bad enough that they allowed what was going on in
Mm.
Europe.
Mm.
So I'm at the point where I've gotten to the story where they've arrived in Cuba,
Mhm.
and the Cuban president has just revoked all their visas.
Mm.
And
And
now,
now,
yes,
what next?
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
keen to hear that, how the story unfolds, but also just try to do some bit of research.
Mm.
It's a very interesting one. Interestingly, I've never heard it. You know, some of us rely on someone called Mukurugenzi to tell us these stories. Mukurugenzi has not yet told us about. You've called it the Hamburg liner.
Mm.
Yes, Mukurugenzi this needs to get to him.
Yeah, but the reason why I think this matters to me is
Mhm.
because I'm a bit of a history buff.
Mm,
And I feel even when we think about our history, even
mm,
as Kenyans,
mhm,
there are a lot of things we sweep under the carpet.
mm,
And so I'm always worried that we're raising a generation that doesn't know where we came from,
mm,
or doesn't know what forms as us.
mm,
So even without going political, because we're trying to be very unpolitical,
mm,
it's a lot of the issues we're having is because we don't know what our roots are.
mm,
Yeah, so I'm always like, oh, but even the stories that we hear about our fight for independence, they're
mm.
very one-sided. And
Yeah.
I remember a quote that the victor gets to write the history.
Yeah.
So the lion is
Mm,
the one. So how it had been put in an African proverb is the lion gets to tell the story.
you never get the dead antelope's version.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting way of looking at it. Wow. Right. So, Marianne, we've had a very interesting conversation so far, the couple of hours that we've been here, and I want us just to try and now start winding down. And as we wind down, is there a single piece of advice or a piece of advice that you'd want to give someone who's considering pursuing a career as an admin?
I think just to tell you that it's an actual career.
Mm,
Admins are all over.
mm,
So You'll find them being called sometimes project managers. You'll find them in whichever field you can think of: healthcare, aviation, anything. So if, for example, you're good with planning and you're good with people and you're good with negotiating, think about admin as a career, because how far you can go is up to you. So it is an actual career to think about. Yeah.
Interesting. And for you and for your department, what next? What do you plan to do, or rather, where do you see your department going from here? Of course, at a in the personal level as well, and with the team that you lead. What's next for you?
The team definitely will grow. I foresee a situation where my current, for example, the project admins would not only be running their own project sites, but then they'd have other smaller project teams as well, and they'd have now people under them, so that we're having a situation where they're probably supervising 2 or 3 people, so that the department is also growing as a whole, and then they're also growing their skills, as well as they'd also grow in terms of their technical aspects, because that's one area that we have realized that as a department we do need to do a bit more in terms of learning, in terms of pursuing. So that's one of the things that we are hoping and we are pushing, that they will upskill their skills to just ensure that they are relevant. Yeah. Personally, I'm currently pursuing my MBA. I'm focusing on strategy, so it's one of the things that I intend to finish in the coming year, first quarter of the year actually, and also to try and see that doctor that I wanted when I was a little girl. Will we pursue it in another way?
Dr. Gathemia.
Yes, it has a good ring.
Yeah, it does. It does actually.
Yeah. So to see if that's something that we will pursue, as well as just a few relevant professional courses that would be very helpful in my current space. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So as we close out this episode of the podcast, allow me to take you back to Mount Kenya and in one of the previous episodes, and I know my director is going to insert that clip. There's an allegation that was made. Yes, an allegation was made, and you are requested to come and give your side of the story.
I am here.
Someone whose name, now that the clip is going to be played, we mention their names. One Thomas,
yes,
made some allegations against you. So here we are. What's your response to him?
What were the allegations?
And that's the same day that you guys almost gave up on me. I still remember some people were saying, wacha huyu arudi bana ameshalemewa. Bana, you guys were not good. You are not fair to me.
I remember day 2, when we were just after breakfast. Now we are starting that hike to shift on, and then a few like AMs in, Tom is like, guys, and then mbele kidogo, I need a break. Niendeleeni mningoje huko mbele, I'll catch up. Kidogo Tom disappears into.
Do you know the interesting thing? The person who was saying that I should go back was carried up there
after the summit.
Up the summit. I won't say who, but he was carried up the summit.
No, we mentioned Moi's name, please.
You want us to mention his name?
No need.
Maryanne. Maryanne said I should go back because I was suffering. I was having very bad body. Back to basic camp.
So so now that I've heard what Thomas was alleging.
Yes.
Keyword alleging.
All these are allegations.
Yes. Which are very
unsubstantiated.
Let me tell you.
Allegations. There's no evidence.
Yes. What I distinctly remember is one Thomas Lovary eating things and us guys trying to tell him slow down.
Mixing snacks. The day before. Yes.
And saying, no, I have trained, I am good to go.
I know myself. Naendanga gym. I cycle.
You see, you were there. only for the next day we just had someone say, hey, wase, songeni mbele kidogo.
Endeni mbele
Endeni mbele
kidogo.
kidogo. So we're like, what do you mean? What's going on?
Kidogo mtu amebranch kwa msitu.
Let me tell you. The poor mountain was traumatized. It was just someone throwing up and throwing up. So to hear that I am being accused of saying that he should have gone back down, I am not even sure where that came. Yes. Because I can honestly say, for me, so what happens, the mountains are very interesting. So you could be the fittest person, but then if your body does not acclimatize, there's nothing you can do.
True.
And that's what actually happened to me. My body refused to acclimatize. At some point, I was so sure I was not going to summit. But we had a very good team. And what happened was, I just had a guide assigned to me and we made it.
He ensured you made it.
Yes.
So what you're saying is, his allegations, because his allegations were twofold. And number one, that you purported arudishwe. Arudishwe base kampana lemewa. And number two, that wewe pia kidogo karibu. Karibu kose kusummit. And what you're saying is,
it was very true. At some, like if we had a team that was more interested in speed, I would definitely not have submitted. My body completely refused. It was just the fact that we had a very understanding team, and they were like, no.
The guides, that is.
Yes. They're like, you know what? Everyone is gonna summit. But kusema ati kuna mali nilisema arudishwe. Let me tell you. To be honest, I was so sick.
You did not even have...
I did not have the energy. I distinctly remember him throwing up because a part of me was hoping I could throw up because the guides were telling us, if you throw up, you feel better. So I remember that because I was just like, Akiseja, I just throw up, then I feel better. So that is why that stuck in my mind. But kumwambia rudi, I was too sick to be bothered with anyone else.
Afadhali you remember him throwing up. Me remember him doing other things. Akituambia tusonge mbele, ilikuwa pia ndo tusitandikwe na tuharufu.
Yes, that's true. I was being nice.
You're being too candid.
Yeah.
But the important thing is that all of us submitted.
Yes.
At the end of the day, all of us made it to the top. And interestingly, we had a synergetic flag.
Yes, we
like
did.
A physical
what happened to that flag, by the way?
I think it's just somewhere within...
okay.
Yeah.
The plan was we were to now plant it on Kili.
Yeah. Of course, with management's permission, we can try doing that next year, isn't it?
That would be a good challenge to take up.
Yeah, it would. It would. Or even just the reflector, just have it and, you know.
Yeah. But we made it.
We did.
We made it.
We did, actually.
Yeah. We are survivors.
We made it to the top.
Yeah.
Kilimanjaro.
Actually, you were also part of it.
Yeah. Our team behind the camera. Yeah. Wow, it was a very interesting one.
And the coolest thing about, fun fact about the person behind the camera. I remember when he showed up on the morning, he had the tiniest bag.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
It was the one thing that we were making fun of him. And yet, interestingly enough, his gear was one of the best.
Yeah.
Like he didn't have, because his gear was specific.
Yes. And you know, that's the other important thing that I noticed for the mountains, because I've also done Mount Kenya again, that when you have the correct gear, you don't have to have too many bags.
Yes.
I remember the guys who had so many bags was because you don't have a summiting jacket. So what do?
You have
you carry 2 layers of your kawaida jacket. You know, you don't have proper hiking boots. You know, you had guys who were hiking with side boots.
But remember, the side boots did not
they
leak.
Maji.
So they were like a good idea. Sisi with our fancy shoes.
Yes,
ziliingiza maji
zote.
So it was, I think that person was very smart.
Yeah, the guys who carried extra pairs of socks. You know?
Nakumbuka nikisaidiwa na socks.
Yeah, I remember. But some of us now, our shoes ziliingiza maji day 1. Now, this trip is 4 days.
Yeah.
Now you're going to Mount Kenya with feet that are wet, and you're walking through ice and through all
Moorland.
those marshes and moorland with wet shoes.
Yes.
And keep in mind, something we learned, you can't sleep properly with feet that are cold.
Yes.
So the entire 4 days, some of us never slept because from day one.
Our shoes. But then now that's the other thing, and I realize it's also part of the reason of having a good guide. Like now when I did it the second time around, we were being taught to wear 2 layers of socks. A thinner layer inside and then a heavier layer on top. So that in case your shoes zingize maji, you're not walking around with wet whatever. And that really made a difference.
Yeah.
So you start learning different hacks the more you do it.
The more you do it, yeah. True. Well, interesting. So Tom, you have your response. I don't know whether we need to give Tom opportunity for a counter response. But yes, we have ascertained.
Maybe what we need to
Tom,
do is to do a podcast for the guys who climbed Mount Kenya.
yes, so that we get unbiased opinions. But at least something that we've been able to settle. Number one is that someone traumatized the mountain, and it was not you.
It was not me.
Someone traumatized the mountain,
yeah.
and it was not you.
No.
And the other thing that we have ascertained is that everyone submitted.
Everyone submitted.
Everyone submitted.
We even have photographic evidence in the office.
Yes, yes. And by there, our director can put one of those photos of us on top of Mount Kenya, somewhere here. All right, final question. This is a question that I always ask my guests. And so far, all of them are getting it wrong. I don't know why. It's a very simple question.
Maybe it's how you ask
these
it.
guys, could be it's how I'm asking it. Or could be I've not put a prize.
Is there a prize?
Well, depends on how you answer. If you get correctly, you could get a prize.
Ooh,
you had asked for the cup, isn't it? For the branded cup.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's see.
But
the
look at how pretty it is.
It is, I know, right? I think we need to get more of these, eh?
We should.
We should.
And then actually get the ones that keep things hot and cold.
Yeah, true. Director.
Are you taking notes?
The next budget, eh? Asante.
So what is my question? With the price of maybe, possibly?
The price of a TPP branded cup. You're given 2 options. One of those options is that your age is rolled back to a 10-year-old. But the information that you have right now, all this information that you've gathered and the experiences you've gathered all these years, you maintain them. But you're rolled back to a 10-year-old.
Okay.
Option 2 is you're given, how much money do you give her? $1 million or $10 million?
That's a lot.
You're given $1 million. In fact, let's make it even more interesting. $1 billion because I'm trying to get you to get the right answer. But you're given a very large amount of money, but your age is accelerated to 70 years. What option would you go for and why?
So I go back. So either go backwards or forward.
Yes, you go
so
back
I'm
to
either 10.
Yes.
But with all the information I know.
Just information.
Just information.
Yes.
Or I go forward to 70.
In fact, was it 70 or was it 60?
Let's make it 60.
It was 70.
Director
is saying we do 70.
70, but yes. I have, actually my bank account is worth how much?
100 million US dollars. That's how many billions in Kenya? 10 billion. It's a large amount of money. The whole idea is it's a large amount of money.
I don't know. Is there a right answer? Is there a wrong answer?
Well, according to me, there is a right and a wrong answer because I have my own opinion on the matter. So if you agree with me, the answer is correct. But ideally, there's no right or wrong answer. You just need to get your perspective. What would you do? Which option would you go for?
I think I'd take the 70. And the reason why I'd take the 70-year-old is, though even as I take it, I'm thinking,
wait. Sijaload kwanza. You take the 100 million USD
Yes.
and
And be older.
70-year-olds.
Yes.
I think we're done. Let's wrap it up. You can have the cup. In fact, you can have the Christmas tree and all the cameras.
You don't want
In
to
fact,
know my reason?
do I need to know the reason? I'll even give add my director to that package. you can have everything.
That was the right answer.
For the first time, we have a guest who has gotten the right answer to this question.
What do you mean?
But
Everyone else
but just,
chooses 10.
But just to humor these people, try to explain to us why you're thinking behind it. Why would you go for that option?
I think because of how much good you can do with that kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I'm pretty fit for my age. We shall not share actual dates, but
no need.
I know very fit people in their 70s. So there's nothing to say that I'll be a 70-year-old who's unwell. And with that kind of money, I can pay for a facelift if I need to. I can pay for Botox. Like I can do, like I can literally buy a new body if I need to. And considering that I'm assuming I'm just being accelerated, so it's not a case of I'm getting someone else's body. I've already been taking care of this body.
Yeah. So definitely you'll
It will still be exactly.
Yeah.
And then I have the benefit of a very healthy bank account that would allow me to travel the world. It would allow me to do a lot of good.
And something interesting that I've heard you mention, that you'll be able to do a lot of good. And that speaks to a legacy.
Yes.
You know, it would be very easy for you to leave a good legacy for you and those that you've left, that you leave behind.
Exactly.
When eventually you cross over to the other side. So this money would actually allow you to leave a legacy
and make a difference. Because by the time you're getting to almost midlife, you've kind of learned a few things, you've picked up a few lessons. So of course you'll go a bit crazy because this is the kind of money that you can't even wrap your head around. But then after maybe a year or two, then you realize, wait, it's what King Solomon said, that it's all vanity. There's only so many cars you can drive. There's only so many posh houses you can buy. There's only so much jewelry you can buy. After a while, you'll be like, oh, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, got the mug. Then you can turn back and say, okay, how can I use this for good? Or how can I make a difference? Then you'll start thinking about probably maybe where around your neighborhood, who needs help. Then now you can widen your scope because you have a bit more money. Then it becomes your county, then it becomes your country, then it becomes around the world. What are the causes that you care about? Yeah.
Interesting. And that amount of money gives you access also, so you're able to do quite
and it gives you a seat at very many big tables.
Yeah, I know.
Look at Bill Gates and the
I know he's influencing the economy of entire nations, you know. Wow, interesting. And the argument we've been getting from previous guests is, with a 10-year-old, you have your whole life ahead of you. You have so much potential. But how I usually also look at it is, hard work, the phrase hard work pays, I don't believe is entirely true. And not to say that people shouldn't hard work, but there is an aspect of luck that also comes to play. I don't know whether you've had cases or examples of people who are really, really hardworking, but they rarely make it.
But isn't that the story for the Mama Mboga or the Mkokoteni guy who's working harder than that guy?
Yeah.
But
they're working very hard.
God's word is very clear that time and chance happens to us all.
Yeah.
So that it's not it's not just about and even when you think about even your job, you are not the best engineer.
True.
But you happened to come, and out of that pool of candidates, you're the one who was chosen. It doesn't, and you're probably chosen over something very small. But it doesn't mean that the other engineer who was not chosen was not just as equally good. And if they came to replace you today, they wouldn't do an equally good job. But it's exactly that time and chance happens to us all. So you cannot say that, and why for me, I wouldn't choose to go back, because remember, you're not going back with a clean slate. You're going back with all the preconceptions, with all the assumptions, with all the learned norms and all of
and
that.
even biases,
Yes. So can you imagine going back to being 10 with a mind of a 30-plus-year-old?
Yeah.
You will already be viewing the world a certain way, and yet the world is not that way. Unless you're going back to when you were 10. Imagine being 10 now. I look at the kids that I'm around, because I also serve in that space, and I'm like, wow, see, navigating being a teen right now is hard.
And by there, you'll probably find, if you're taken back to a 10-year-old, and this is the other risk, if you're taken back to a 10-year-old right now, and you find all 10-year-olds have the same information as you,
Yeah.
you're like, what? Times
Actually, they have more.
They probably have more, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and then you see that's the caveat, because I'd want to know, am I being sent back to 10 when I was 10?
Or is it 10
Or is
in
it 10 now
in
in
2024?
2020? Yeah.
Yeah, if it's 10 back when you are 10, then maybe.
With the information,
yes. Then maybe, yeah.
But if it's
you'd
10
invest
now,
in Facebook, invest in,
Yeah.
buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, you'd be there telling your parents, you see that 100K you have, I will put it on this.
Not even 100K. Back then it would even be 1,000 more.
By the way.
Yeah. Wow, interesting
Yeah.
perspectives. Interesting perspectives.
Now I have conversations with 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds, and I'm like, okay, what did you just do? Okay. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. I think you discover that all the information you have is very irrelevant very quickly. Yeah.
Okay. So interesting perspectives there. Thank you, Maryanne, for making time. It's been quite, let's say it's quite difficult, but it's a privilege to have you on our podcast. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. This is a very special episode, like we said, because it's our last episode of the year, and it's I'm very glad to have had you. Very glad that you were able to get the correct answer.
And I'm still waiting to find out what's my prize. Like, is there a prize?
No. We've given you everything.
You
can even have
you
my
cannot
seat.
you cannot
can have
turn
my
back.
seat as the host. Whatever you want, whatever you have, half of the kingdom. That's what was given.
Nipewe.
Yes, we give you keys to half of the kingdom.
But thank you for an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Who knew we could talk for this long?
Yeah, I was actually looking at the time.
Wait.
It's been 4.5 hours.
No.
Yes, it's been 4.5 hours. I don't know
Talking
how my
about
director.
words.
I don't know how the director will compress this. I'll have to compress this into
This one
2
needs
hours.
reels.
Yeah, or
Director, tunaomba reels.
or episodes.
Hii yetu ikuwe na reels or something.
Ikuwe na episodes.
Ikuwe na episode, itakuwa na episode 1, 2, 3, 4.
What?
But thank you.
Well, karibu sana.
Yeah.
All right, so asanteni sana. Thank you. As we wrap up the year, here's to wishing you a Merry Christmas and a happy and prosperous New Year. Happy holidays.